Griff Hamlin here. Welcome and thanks for joining me. In today's video, we're going to try and do something kind of cool for blues soloing. Now, if you have always wanted to solo in the blues, but weren't quite sure where to start, sometimes it's really intimidating to feel like you have to learn all these scales and all these patterns and blah, 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 blah. We're going to get rid of all that. This is soloing with no regard whatsoever for a scale or a lick or any of those things. And while I think all of those things are useful and I think all of those things are great, it's real easy to lose the forest for the trees. So the whole idea today is to play. Have some fun and play. So what I'm going to do is walk you through a few simple steps to kind of get you started, get you going in the right direction, and then really it's a matter of experimenting with it and coming up with some sounds you dig. So let's talk a little bit about where we're going to go with this. We're going to start, we're going to be in the key of A. All right, we're going to have a blues in A. Now, as much as I'm going to try to avoid theory, the reality is that you're going to be in a key. I can't really make things have no key whatsoever. I can, but I can also pretty much promise you won't dig the sound. So theoretically, yes, the world is your oyster. Play whatever note you want. But let's face it, most of them don't sound good. So let's cut to the chase, okay? So we're going to be in the key of A, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with an A. Let's start with the A here on the second string. You got to be able to find your notes on the second string in order to do this. And I think obviously at some point you should be able to find your notes on every string. But for now, we're going to start with the second string because it tends to be where I gravitate towards a lot. And like if I transcribe B.B. King stuff or Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff, I see a lot of stuff sort of hovering around that second string root. And there's some reasons for that. Save that for another video. Okay, so A on the second string is at the 10th fret. So what I want you to do is with your third finger, grab that A. Okay, now there's a cool little trick called an octave, right? So an octave is the same note but found in a different place. We have that A, we have the A below it, one octave below it. So from the second string, go down 3 frets and 2 strings, and you have the lower A octave. So there's an A, and there's an A, right? So I want you to get comfortable going back and forth between those two A's. And I want you to use your third finger on your left hand, or your right hand if you're left-handed, to play those two notes. Okay? Now, that doesn't sound like much yet. I get that. We're building up. However, let me turn on a jam track, just a blues in A, and I'm going to play a solo with, so far, just this one note. All right, check it out. All right, so I realize not super exciting. You could, if you know the names of your notes around, you could play, could grab up there. There's other A's to be had. Okay, but for right now, I'm just trying to make this really, really simple and straightforward and just go with these basic 2 A's. Okay, so now that you've got the A, should have this A and this A. What I want you to do is I want you to add a note 2 frets below that with your first finger, and your first finger should fall pretty easily right there. So now I've got my A, and I've got what's called the flatted 7th. My A and the flatted 7th. If I want to be someplace else, A and a flatted 7th, A and a flatted 7th, A and a flatted 7th. The reason, though, that you'll see me not use low strings so much is because guitar solos tend not to use the low strings so much. So I'm going with what's common, all right? So I now have 2 notes. I have a root and I have a flat 7th. Now, I know why a flat 7th works. You may or may not know why a flat 7th works. It's really not important. Right now, you can take my word for it that it does. If you're playing a blues, you can play roots and you can play flat 7ths and they'll always sound good, okay? So again, let me put on a track real quick and show you. So again, it's not crazy exciting, but it's getting better quickly. Okay, so notice that again, I still haven't talked about any scales, haven't really talked about any theory, any of that sort. All we need is a root, okay? We need to be able to play the same note as the key. So let's add one more. So far we have our root that we started with. I sometimes call this an anchor. We have our flatted seventh, all right? Now, I want to add one more. From going back to our anchor, I want to go up to 2 frets down, but the string above. Okay, so if you want to think of it as just the string above your flatted seventh, there's my anchor, there's my flatted seventh. There is my flat third. Same thing down here. Or over here. Oops, I run out of space. I don't have a string. That's right. I don't have another higher string. So I'm never going to get that note up there. It doesn't exist. I could do it there. Could do it there. That's not going to work right because of the funkiness between the third and the second string. So I'll have to add a fret. So if you want to do that, no problem, but you don't have to. Remember, all we need is the second string root and the fourth string root. And in fact, the third string root is the same note as the second string root, just in a different area of the fretboard. So it's not like you have to have that at your disposal. And since it's a little weird, I'm ignoring it for the time being. So now I have 3 notes, all right? Let's play a little bit. Check it out. All right, so by now, hopefully you're starting to see that this doesn't have to get super complex, okay? Now, you're kind of noodling at this point. Hopefully you're, turning on a jam track as well. There's tons of blues and A jam tracks out there, so I'm sure you won't have any trouble finding one, but hopefully you could just sort of play with it. And one of the things that I didn't mention, but that makes a lot of difference, is when I have these other notes, to, instead of always starting on my anchor, to maybe start on the flat third or the flat seventh. And maybe focus on those. And then I've got one more note that I want to add. And that's this one right here. So from my anchor, it's just the next string up. And that's called the fourth. And I know you may not know where these flat thirds and 7 and root and fourth comes from. They come from the major scale. That's all you need to know. You don't have to know this. But notice that I still haven't talked about a scale yet. And we still haven't learned any licks. It's all just picking these particular notes, right? So I've got my root, my flat 7, again my root, my flat third, and my fourth. Okay? If you want to play it up here, you can. But notice that that's the same notes as this, and that is the same note as that. That one you don't get very far. You could play down there, but people don't really play down there much. So, there's a lot of options, but they may not be that useful. Okay? So now we have 4 notes. We have, again, my root. Let's go back a second. My root, my flatted 7th, which is just 2 frets below it, my flat 3rd, which is above the flat 7th, and my 4th, which is above my root. And I can do things like hammer-ons, or pull-offs, and I can even do some bends in some spots, but let's not make it difficult. Let's keep it simple first, okay? So let me show you one more time. I'm going to play now just these 4 notes. And you've probably heard of a video I've done in the past called the 4-note solo, which uses these exact 4 notes. But now you know how I got to the 4 notes. All right, check it out. And so I sort of tried to, play some similar ideas so that you could hear how they really don't change when I move around, sometimes from one region to another. Okay, so now you've got your 4 notes, and really that's pretty much all you need. Okay? But I'm going to show you one more little trick, which is there's kind of a cool way to connect this stuff. Okay, well, as it turns out that I can bend. When I do a bend, right, I can bend one whole step comfortably, which is 2 frets, right? Okay, so I could actually bend any note that I'm playing, the 7th, there's my flat 7th. If I bend that a step, it matches my root, because you have to always bend to a note. Now that's kind of tough, so I'll be perfectly honest, I don't do that much. Okay, the flat third could bend to the 4th, but again, I don't do it much with my first finger. And the 4th, you might think, well, that really can't bend, but it actually turns out you can, and it creates what's called a 5th. Okay. But that's actually the most comfortable out of all of these notes to bend. Because if I try to bend that root, it goes to a 2. Doesn't sound quite right. It doesn't get to the next note unless I really push it up. And you can do that. But it's much better and much easier to bend that 4th. Okay? Well, there's another thing I can do. Instead of bending, I can slide. So if I slide my 4th, then I get another 5th. Okay? But now look how close I am. That note right there is at the 9th fret of the 3rd string. Well, look at when I play my shape up here. It's right, that 9th fret is right there. Okay, or if I go from here and I slide up to the 5th, well, I'm right under the next iteration of that pattern. And it turns out there's a ton of great stuff right there. Now what you've done is you've just created the minor pentatonic scale. Spoiler alert. I said I wasn't going to talk about scales, but what you've done is you've just put together the minor pentatonic scale. However, you've done it in a really interesting way. You've done it by learning roots and then flatted thirds, or flatted 7ths, I'm sorry, and then flatted thirds, and then 4ths, and then 5ths. So you're now considerably more aware. It makes it look like you're crazy. You may be. We're guitar players after all. But you're much more aware of, okay, I'm playing a root now. I'm playing a flat 3rd now. I'm playing a flat 7 now. That may not mean anything to you at this point, but there's going to come a time when you're going to start thinking more advanced, and you are going to care a great deal about, oh, this is a flat 3rd, and this is a 4th, and this is a 5th. Because when the chords change, for example, your flat 3rd magically becomes the sweet flat 7th of the 4 chord. And I know that probably sounds pretty crazy, because if you're just getting started soloing, you're going to think to yourself, how on earth am I ever going to remember all that? You're not, and I don't want you to. Just take some time and experiment right now. You're just trying to babble, as I like to call it, right? Just take this one shape and play in different places. Just take this little tiny fragment and play around with it and get some practice with it. And all of a sudden you're soloing. That's it. I mean, you're soloing right there. Okay, it's very exciting. It's super fun. I used to just spend hours, just learn a little pattern and just put it all over the fretboard. Just play with it because it's super, super, super fun. Okay, so that's pretty much going to do it for us today. Now, there's a lot more to blues soloing, and this is a concept that I call soloing without scales. I have a course of the same name. Of course, I have the 4-note solo that you may have heard about, and I'll try to leave links in and around this video to some of these various sources. But this is a fantastic way to approach blues soloing, and particularly if you're just getting started, you might really enjoy, not having to think so much and just kind of go with your gut a little bit more. All right, so hope you dig this video, hope you had some fun, and if you're seeing this on YouTube, make sure you like it, subscribe to it, all those YouTube things that people do, and I look forward to talking to you real soon. Take care.